The silence in this damn house started getting to me the second Eunice was gone. 30 years of building a life in our home on Maple Street, and now all that filled it was her absence. 49 years we'd been together. I know that number because I counted it last night while lying awake, staring at the ceiling. Now, every morning I still make 2 cups of coffee, habit, muscle memory, but only one gets drunk. The other I pour straight into the sink, watching it swirl down the drain like the last bit of warmth this house ever knew. After she passed, the place turned into a museum. Every corner, every shelf, every damn doorknob reminded me of her. The sunroom. That was her greenhouse project. Eunice loved saving things. Discarded plants from neighbors. She'd bring them back to life like they were sacred. We did the same with animals. Strays, injured, abandoned. This house was a sanctuary, not just for us, but for every living creature that needed a second chance. She used to say, "David, they can't say thank you, but if you look in their eyes, you'll see they mean it." Damn right she was. I met her in 1970, back when I was cutting my teeth as a civil engineer for a firm in Cincinnati. She worked in the office next door, a secretary who spent her lunch breaks feeding stray cats behind the building. I was a goner the first time I saw her laugh at one of the kittens climbing into her purse. 5 months later, we were married. 3 years after that, we had Helena. Helena. From the start, she was different, cold, calculated. Where Eunice and I found joy in small things, gardening, animals, sunsets, Helena saw nothing but numbers and gain. At 16, she threw a tantrum that could have leveled a city block because we wouldn't buy her the same car the neighbor's kid bought with her own money. "You don't do anything for me," she'd screamed. Eunice cried the whole night after. After college, Helena married Brandon Bowen, a realtor with a plastic smile and eyes that measured everything by its resale value. They built a life on profit margins and polite distance. Holidays were about the only time we saw them, and not every year either. Our only real connection was Derek, their son. He got Eunice's eyes, her patience. From the time he was a kid, he loved visiting on weekends, helping with the animals, listening to my stories about building bridges and hospitals and homes. Helena hated how close we were, but she couldn't stop it. That morning I was halfway through my coffee when the doorbell rang. I didn't need to look. I knew it was her. Helena always rang in 3 short, impatient bursts. Same as always. "Daddy, you didn't answer the phone again," she barked the second I opened the door, pushing past me without even saying hello. Her perfume hit me like a slap. Something expensive and way too strong. "Good morning, Helena," I said as I shut the door behind her. "I was in the garden." Lie. I hadn't stepped outside all morning. I just didn't want to talk to her. Same as the last 5 times she'd called this week. "You've got all the windows shut again. It's stuffy in here," she complained, tossing her designer bag onto the couch like it was garbage. Then she headed straight to the kitchen. I brought groceries. "I have groceries," I said quietly, trailing behind her. "There was half a bottle of milk and stale bread in your fridge. That's not living, Dad." She started unloading prepackaged everything, fruit sliced into sterile plastic containers, pre-cooked meals, overpriced garbage. Everything about her was efficient, sterile, transactional. Like love and loyalty were lines on a spreadsheet. I sat down at the table and just watched. She moved like a machine. Her hair was pulled into one of those tight buns that make a face look sharper than it needs to be. "How's Derek doing?" I asked, just to shift gears. Her mouth twitched. "Busy. He said he might stop by Saturday. I told him not to. He needs to focus on his career." And there it was. That old familiar burn in my gut. She wanted to cut him off, too. "I told him not to. He needs to focus on his career." That line hit me harder than I expected. She always did that, made decisions for everyone else and acted like it was for their own good, even when it cut them off at the knees. I looked her dead in the eye. "Derek told me he wanted to come show me something on his computer. He said, Saturday." Helena rolled her eyes and started rearranging the groceries. "Dad, it's not healthy. You get too attached. He's not a little boy anymore." No, he wasn't. But he was still kind, still present, Still the only damn person who treated me like I mattered, unlike his mother, who only showed up now with designer bags and fake concern because she was sniffing around for something. "This house is too big for one person," Helena said, her tone switching from daughter to auditor. She glanced around with that same critical eye she used when she was 10, complaining our furniture looked old. 4 bedrooms? A garden? Who's cleaning all this? "Mrs. Patterson comes by twice a week," I answered, watching her reaction close. "You're still paying her?" She looked at me like I just told her I bought a yacht. "That's ridiculous, Dad. It's a waste of money." Then her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, looked at the screen, and muttered, "I have to take this. It's work." She walked out to the living room, but she forgot how well this old house carries sound. I stayed in the kitchen, sipping coffee and listening to pieces of her conversation. "Yeah, I'm here now." "No, not yet. Tuesday works." "Yes, he thinks the house is worth that much." My grip tightened on the cup. I didn't need a degree in psychology to put it together, a realtor, a home appraisal. He thinks the house is worth that much. Suddenly, her frequent visits, her comments about space, the groceries, the check-ins, it all fit. When she came back, she smiled like nothing happened. "Sorry, work stuff," she said, brushing her hair back. "Where were we?" "You said I shouldn't be paying Mrs. Patterson," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Oh, right." She laughed lightly and waved it off. "I'm just worried about you. Your pension's not endless, Dad." I nodded slowly. "It's enough. And my investments are doing fine." Her head jerked a little. "Investments?" "You never asked," I shrugged. "Your mother and I were always careful, saved a lot, put it in the right places." I watched her brain flick a switch. Her eyes started scanning me like I was a spreadsheet she hadn't seen before. "How significant are these investments?" I took another sip of my coffee. "Enough that I don't have to worry." Helena smiled, but it was the kind of smile that's all teeth and no warmth. "That's wonderful, Dad. But even so, money doesn't solve the issue of security. Living alone at your age, it's risky." There it was, the slow push, the test balloon. I'd been expecting it, but it still hit me like a slap. "I'm 78, Helena, not a houseplant. I'm fine. Dr. Myers just told me last week I'm in great shape." She didn't argue, just leaned back in her chair like she was planting a seed and waiting for it to sprout. "I'll think about it," I muttered. That seemed to satisfy her for the moment. She stood up, gathering her purse. "I have to get to work. I'll swing by tomorrow. Maybe bring more groceries." She stopped at the doorway and turned. "Mind if I take a few pictures of the house? I want to show my interior designer some ideas. You know, safety stuff." "Sure," I said flatly. "Do what you need to." She walked around snapping photos, walls, furniture, fixtures. I stood in the kitchen watching the second cup of coffee still sitting there. Eunice's cup, her ritual. And now our daughter was planning to sell our life right out from under me. The moment the front door clicked shut behind her, I walked straight to the living room window and pulled the curtain back. Helena was already outside, standing in front of her shiny black Lexus, still snapping pictures of the house from the sidewalk, like she was casing the place. Not for memories, for resale. She took a few shots of the garden Eunice built with her own hands, then climbed in and drove off. I stood there a long while, staring out at the spot where her car had been. My coffee had gone cold. I didn't even notice. My mind was spinning too fast. The visits, the photos, the fake concern, all of it was a setup. And now I had no doubt. She was planning to ship me off and liquidate the life Eunice and I built brick by brick. I turned and walked through the house slowly, letting my fingers brush the surfaces, bookshelves I built myself, the armchair where Eunice read every morning, the framed photo from our 25th anniversary. Everywhere I looked, her spirit lived in these walls, and Helena wanted to reduce it all to a price per square foot. That evening, the doorbell rang again. My pulse jumped. But this time it was Derek. He stood there grinning, holding a pizza box in one hand and a bottle of whiskey in the other. "Surprise, Grandpa," he said. "Figured I couldn't wait till Saturday." That boy? I pulled him into a hug. "Does your mother know you're here?" "Nope," he smirked. "Told her I had a date. Technically true. I've got a date with my favorite guy in Cincinnati and the best pepperoni in town." We camped out in the living room eating pizza straight from the box like old times. Derek talked a mile a minute about his new job, some tech startup where he was doing network security. His hands flew through the air while he explained it, just like Eunice used to do when she was excited. He had her smile too, the one that reached his eyes. I waited till he finished rambling before asking, "So, how's your mom?" He sighed, shoulders sinking. "She's her usual self, always working, always in some meeting. Lately, she's been extra weird, though, talking a lot about big changes, some new project." I gave him a look. "She was here today, taking pictures, said something about an interior designer." Derek's expression twisted. "Yeah, Grandpa, I overheard her and Dad talking about the house last week. Something about a realtor. I didn't catch everything." I set my drink down. "Tell me the truth. Does she want me to move out?" Derek looked away. That was answer enough. Then he finally said, "Yeah. She thinks you'd be so better off somewhere else. Safer, cheaper. She's already been looking into places." I didn't want to believe it. "And she's already picked out the replacement house?" I asked. His silence said everything. But then he looked me square in the face and said, "Grandpa, I don't agree with her. This is your home, yours and Grandma's. I told her it was wrong, but you know how she is. She never listens." I nodded. That's always been Helena's way. She thinks she knows what's best for everyone. We sat quietly for a while. Derek flipped on the TV and found some documentary about bridge building, something I used to talk about when he was little. He always loved those stories. We watched for maybe 30 minutes before the doorbell rang again. Derek tensed. "It's her. She said she'd pick me up at 10. "I got it," I said, standing. Sure enough, Helena stood there, arms crossed, lips tight. Her eyes flicked past me to Derek. "There you are," she said coldly. "I called 4 times. "Sorry," Derek said, holding up his phone. "I had the ringer off. Grandpa and I were watching something." "At 10 o'clock at night?" she snapped, stepping inside uninvited. "Some things never change." "At 10 o'clock at night?" she snapped, stepping inside uninvited. Her heels clacked on the hardwood like she owned the place. "Derek, you've got an early shift tomorrow," she added, her voice syrupy with that fake maternal concern she liked to weaponize. Then her eyes shifted to me. "And Daddy, routines are important at your age." I smiled just enough to piss her off. "I feel fine, Helena. Derek and I were having a nice evening. Something we used to do every Saturday before you decided to run the calendar." "Of course, Daddy," she said, forcing a smile. "But everything in moderation. Derek, let's go." He started gathering his things, and I could see it in his eyes. He didn't want to go, but he didn't want to escalate the situation either. Before they left, Helena took a slow walk around the living room. She lingered by the bookshelf, brushed her fingers across the framed photos on the mantel, touched the wooden arm of the chair Eunice used to sit in. "You ever think about updating the furniture?" she asked, not looking at me. "We like it just fine," I said. Her tone shifted, cool, dismissive. "It's all so outdated. The style, the colors. I mean, Dad, this house needs to be brought into the present." "It has value to us," I replied. "Sentimental value," she corrected. "But at some point you have to stop clinging to the past and look forward." Derek came back in, jacket in hand. "I'm ready, Mom." He gave me a strong hug. "Thanks for tonight, Grandpa. I'll come back Saturday." I smiled. "You're always welcome." But Helena jumped in. "Actually, Derek, we have dinner with the Thompsons this Saturday. Did you forget?" He froze. "I thought that was next weekend." "No, it's this weekend. I had to reschedule because they're out of town next Saturday. I sent you a text." She pulled out her phone and started scrolling, then added with a faux apologetic tone, "Oh, looks like I forgot to hit send." I looked Derek in the eye and saw the same thing I felt. She was lying through her perfect white teeth. "That's okay," I said before he could respond. "Come back when you can." They left a minute later, and I watched from the window again. I don't know what I expected. Maybe some part of me hoped Helena would turn around, look up at the house, and remember what it meant. But she didn't. She just got in her car, started it up, and pulled away like this was all part of her checklist. I wandered the house for a while after that, touching things like they were already gone. The armrest of Aunt Eunice's favorite chair, the kitchen counter where she used to line up medication for the animals, the Bell collection she started on our second anniversary. Everything had a story. Everything mattered. And then I saw it. Something small, black, on the floor, by the couch, a leather notebook. I picked it up and flipped it open. My breath stopped. There it was, her handwriting. The first page read, House preliminary appraisal $460,000. I sat down slowly, flipping page after page, notes about realtors, estimated commissions, a short list titled Furniture Liquidation, Auction Contacts, Boarding House Options, Sun Valley circled in red ink, monthly cost breakdowns, power of attorney documentation checklist, and on the last page, possible move-in date 2 weeks, don't delay. I felt like someone had pulled the rug from under me and let me fall into concrete. 2 weeks, she had it all planned. The house, the furniture, me, everything. She wasn't just nudging me toward some idea. She had already made the damn decision. I stared at that last page, my knuckles white around the cover. My own daughter had written me off like I was a broken appliance. She was planning to erase me before I was even gone. I set that notebook on my desk like it was radioactive. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from rage. That thick, rising kind that starts in your gut and climbs up your spine like a fire. 2 weeks. My daughter, my only child, was about to move me out of my home, sell everything Aunt Eunice and I built, and dump me in some budget-level boarding house like an unwanted stray. I didn't even get the courtesy of a conversation, just lies, layers of them, wrapped in fake kindness and designer handbags. The next morning, Helena called. Her voice was sugary. Dad, did I leave a notebook at your place? Black leather cover? Has some work notes in it. I stared at the damn thing sitting right in front of me. Haven't seen anything, I lied. Maybe check your car. Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe I left it at the office. Anyway, I'll drop by tomorrow. Groceries and a few things to go over. Sure, I said and hung up. I needed time. Time to think, time to act. And I wasn't about to give her a single inch more power than she'd already taken. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about Aunt Eunice, about the night we talked in the garden, watching Derek play with a kitten she'd just rescued. She'd said something I hadn't taken seriously at the time. You know, David, I don't think Helena sees this house the way we do. If something happens to us, I'd rather this place go to the animals than become just another listing. I remembered laughing at the time, brushing it off. But now, I saw she'd been right. Again. The next morning, I opened the drawer in my desk and pulled out an old business card. Pierce Edmonds, my lawyer, my friend. A man who didn't mince words and knew how to draw blood with a fountain pen if needed. I called the number. The receptionist put me through. Lloyd, he said, the second he heard my voice. It's David, I corrected gently, though the mistake was understandable. We hadn't spoken in over a decade. David Finnick. Damn, it's been a long time. I need help, Pierce. It's urgent. Family business, not the good kind. He didn't hesitate. You free tomorrow morning? 10 o'clock? I'll be there. That call was the first real breath I'd taken in days. The next morning I got up early and pulled out the suit Aunt Eunice always said made me look 10 years younger, brushed my hair, shined my shoes. If I was going to take my life back, I was going to look like a man worth listening to. When I arrived at Pierce's downtown office, he greeted me with the same bear-grip handshake he'd always had. He looked older, sure, we all did, but he still had that same sharp gleam in his eyes. I laid out everything, the visits, the fake concern, the overheard phone calls, the notebook, the documents I knew she planned to slip in front of me under the guise of insurance forms. He listened without interrupting. Then he opened the notebook. His face went tight. This is damning, David. She's already lined everything up. The boarding house, the sale, even the auction of your belongings. I know, that's why I'm here. I want to fight back, not just stall her. I want to make sure this house never becomes hers to sell. What are you thinking? I want to donate it, turn it into an animal shelter, Eunice's dream. He leaned back, impressed. You sure about that? I've never been more sure of anything. Pierce nodded, already reaching for a legal pad. Then let's make it happen. Fast. It was time to take the house off the table and put the power back in my hands. Pierce didn't waste a second. The moment I said the word donate, he was on his feet, pulling folders and forms from cabinets like a man who'd been waiting for a real fight. We'll start with a deed of gift, he said, scribbling notes. I know 2 foundations that specialize in animal welfare, legit, transparent, and they actually use the resources for the animals, not just fundraising stunts. Eunice would have liked that, I said, picturing her watering her orchids in the sunroom while a cat curled around her ankles. Pick the one that'll take care of this place like she did. Pierce nodded. New Hope Foundation. That's the one I'd trust. Good, I said. And one more thing, I want to set up a trust fund for Derek. He's the only one who's shown up for me since Nice died. He deserves better than what his parents are turning him into. Pierce raised his eyebrows. How much are we talking? I gave him the number. He let out a low whistle. Damn, David. You weren't just building bridges all those years. You were stacking bricks in the bank, too. I shrugged. We lived modest. Eunice clipped coupons even when we didn't need to. I just did the smart thing with the rest. Pierce leaned forward. You do realize your daughter's going to lose her mind when she finds out, right? She'll fight this. Hard. She can try, I said. But I've got a clean bill of health from Dr. Myers dated last week. Mental acuity, physical condition, all green lights. Perfect, he said, flipping the document open. That plus a notary, 2 witnesses, and my reputation, she won't have a leg to stand on. We'll file it all tomorrow. House goes to New Hope. Trust to Derek. You'll sign everything in front of the notary. Let's do it. That night, I didn't sleep again, but not from stress. This time, it was adrenaline. I was taking back control, and every part of me buzzed with the satisfaction of it. Helena thought she had her hands wrapped around the last years of my life like she was tying a bow on a present. She was about to find out I was the one holding the scissors. Next morning, I was back at Pierce's office by 9 sharp. Martha King, director of the New Hope Foundation, met us there. Middle-aged woman with kind eyes and an iron backbone. You could tell within 2 minutes she didn't take shortcuts or tolerate nonsense. I told her about Eunice, about the rescues, the late-night bottle feedings, the litters of kittens born in our basement, the makeshift squirrel rehab we did that one wild summer. Martha wiped her eye, but didn't let it break her. Mr. Finnick, I don't think I've ever heard a more powerful reason for a donation. We'd be honored to turn your home into a shelter, and we'll name it after your wife. That sealed it. I signed every document Pierce placed in front of me. Each stroke of the pen felt like armor sliding into place. The house, mine and Eunice's, now belonged to New Hope with the legal stipulation it could never be resold. It would remain an animal shelter as long as the structure stood. The trust fund paperwork followed. A secure financial future for Derek, managed independently, no access for Helena, no way to manipulate it, a fortress for the one person who actually gave a damn about me. Pierce made copies and promised to submit everything to the county and state before the end of the day. Tomorrow, he said, the changes become official. And just in time, because at 2 o'clock sharp Helena would be back with her fake smile and a stack of papers she planned to trick me into signing. Only this time, the only thing getting signed was her defeat. At exactly 2 p.m., Helena rang the doorbell like she always did. 3 sharp jabs, fast and impatient. But this time, she wasn't alone. Brandon stood behind her, carrying a slim black folder under one arm and wearing a smug little grin like he'd already sealed the deal. "Daddy," Helena said, stepping inside and kissing my cheek with lips colder than marble. "You remember Brandon." "Of course," I said, shaking his hand stiffly. I saw him once a year, usually long enough to hear about real estate markets and how you got to move assets before they rot. They took their seats in the living room like they were hosting a seminar. Helena glanced around again like the place offended her. "We just want to talk about your future," she said sweetly, folding her hands in her lap. "Since Mom passed, it's been a lot. This house is big, lonely, and full of memories," I added. Brandon jumped in with the energy of a man trying to close a deal. "Exactly. And we found a great place, David. Sun Valley Residential, state-of-the-art. Staff on-site, scheduled meals, clean, safe." "A nursing home," I said flatly. "A boarding residence," Helena corrected, her voice tightening. "You'll have your own room, plenty of activities, medical supervision. It's not about pushing you out, Dad. It's about making sure you're comfortable and looked after." "And the house?" I asked, watching their expressions carefully. Brandon coughed. "Well, of course we'd keep an eye on it, maintain it, maybe rent it short-term just to cover some costs." Helena nodded quickly. "Just until we know what's best for you long-term." I almost laughed. They couldn't even be bothered to hide it anymore. "And how much is this luxurious boarding house?" "Don't worry about that," she said too fast. "We've already paid the deposit. Your pension will cover the rest. It's the basic package." Of course it was. "What if I say I want to stay here?" Helena's expression cracked for just a second before she smoothed it out. "Dad, we've already discussed this. You forget to turn things off. The stove, the front door." "That's not true." "You don't remember. That's the problem," she said, glancing at Brandon for backup. "David," Brandon said, leaning forward like a greasy consultant, "this is about peace of mind. You don't want to burden Derek. You want him focused on his future, right?" They were circling me like vultures, waiting for me to collapse under the guilt trip. I leaned back in my chair and let out a long breath, pretending to weigh it all. "I'll think about it," I said slowly. "It's a big step." Helena lit up. "Of course, but actually, it would be ideal if you decided today. We already have the moving van reserved for tomorrow morning. The boarding house is expecting you by 11 or Eve." That was it. Their whole scheme, perfectly timed, one push, one signature, and they'd be rid of me by brunch. I looked at the folder in Brandon's hands. "Are there documents I need to sign?" Helena pulled them out like a magician with her final trick. "Just a few forms, standard boarding consent, a couple of insurance releases, and this," she tapped the last one, "power of attorney, just in case you need help with bills while you're settling in." I took the stack, slid on my reading glasses, and began to go through them slowly, painfully slow. Helena shifted in her seat, tapping her manicured nails on her knee. "Dad, it's really just formality. I always read what I sign," I cut in. "Engineer's habit." I reached the last page and signed only the boarding consent. Then I picked up the power of attorney and slid it back toward her. "Not this one." Helena blinked. "Why not?" "I'll decide later," I said calmly. "Let's see how the boarding house treats me first." She forced a smile. "Of course, Daddy. You can always sign it later." "Yeah, sure, if hell freezes over." The next morning, they showed up right on schedule. 10 o'clock sharp. Brandon was driving a rental van, engines still running in the driveway like they were afraid I'd change my mind if given an extra minute. Helena came in all business, scanning the room like she was already measuring for new curtains. "Ready, Daddy?" she chirped. I nodded and pointed to the 2 modest bags by the door. "I packed light. Like you said, the place has everything I need." She gave a satisfied smile, but something in her eyes flickered. Maybe confusion that I wasn't putting up a fight. Maybe suspicion. Either way, I didn't give her time to question it. Brandon grabbed my bags and hauled them out like it was just another day at the office. Meanwhile, Helena stood there, shifting from foot to foot, checking her watch every 10 seconds. "We need to be there before 11, she muttered. "They have orientation and medical intake." I took one last walk through the house, slow and deliberate. Helena didn't say a word, didn't dare rush me. She was too close to the finish line. I could feel her clenching her teeth with every second I took to pause in front of a photo or brush my hand across a piece of furniture. When I stepped out the front door, I turned around and looked at the house one last time. I said goodbye in my head, not to the structure, but to the life I'd lived inside it. because even though Helena thought she was walking away with it, she had no idea it was already out of her reach. The drive to Sun Valley took 40 minutes. The moment we pulled up, I knew exactly what kind of place it was. A gray, flat-faced building with a sad little garden out front and a parking lot view from every window. It smelled like bleach and boiled vegetables, a holding tank for people waiting to be forgotten. A plump woman at the front desk smiled without warmth and ran me through the standard intake questions like she was reading a script. All the while, she kept addressing Helena, not me. Like I wasn't capable of answering for myself. "Room 205, she said finally. "Second floor. Basic package includes 3 meals, weekly cleaning, and monthly medical review. Any additional services are extra." Of course they were. My room was the size of a motel unit. Bed, nightstand, metal closet, and a desk with a chipped edge. No TV, no phone. Just a single window looking out at a cracked asphalt lot. "Isn't it cozy?" Helena said, setting my bags down like she was proud of it. "Everything you need, right here." "Sure," I said, flat as the linoleum floors. She handed me a printed schedule. "Meals are at 7, 12, and 6. They have bingo on Tuesdays and music therapy on Thursdays. I'll check on you in a few days, okay?" I nodded, barely listening. Then she paused. "Do you have the keys to the house?" I pulled them from my pocket, holding them a second longer than I needed to before placing them in her palm. "Keep an eye on the place while I'm gone." She snatched them like they were gold coins. "Of course, Daddy. Don't worry about a thing." I didn't, because I already knew the keys were useless. The house wasn't hers. Not anymore. She gave me a cold kiss on the cheek, muttered a quick goodbye, and left the room like she was late for a manicure. I walked to the window and waited until I saw her get in the car with Brandon. She pulled out the keys and showed them to him, grinning like a thief walking away from a perfect heist. What she didn't realize? The vault was already empty. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling of room 205, listening to the hum of the hallway lights and the occasional shuffle of a walker against tile. The air was stale, heavy with disinfectant and resignation. It wasn't just the room or the place. It was knowing how smug she'd looked walking out of here with those keys in her hand. Helena thought she'd won. But the truth? She was about to walk into the biggest surprise of her life. The next evening there was a knock at my door. It wasn't staff. It was Derek. He stood there in jeans and a hoodie, holding a takeout bag and looking more pissed off than I'd seen him in years. "Grandpa," he said, wrapping me in a quick hug. "What the hell is this?" I stepped aside to let him in. "You heard." He set the food down on the desk and turned to me. "Mom didn't even tell me. I found out from one of her co-workers. She actually moved you in here?" "She did." "Jesus, this place is—" He looked around, clearly at a loss. "This is where she thinks you belong?" I smiled. "Sit down, Derek. We've got a lot to talk about." We ate while I told him everything, about the notebook, the overheard call, my meeting with Pierce, the donation papers, the trust fund. His eyes grew wider with every sentence. "You gave the house to an animal shelter?" he said finally, stunned. "And you made me the beneficiary of a trust fund?" I nodded. "The shelter will carry your grandma's name, and the trust will help you do whatever you want. Start a business, buy a home, whatever path you choose, but it'll be yours, not your mother's." He leaned back in the chair, silent for a long time. Then his voice cracked. "I don't even know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," I told him. "Just use it wisely. Live the kind of life your grandma would have been proud of." He swallowed hard. "She's going to lose her mind, Grandpa. She's already lost more than she realizes." The next few days were slow, the same gray routines. Breakfast at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 6. I made polite conversation with the others, Harold, the former accountant, Edith, who knitted silently all day, but I didn't settle. I wasn't here to make friends. I was here to let Helena bury herself. She called once on day 3, probably out of obligation. "How are you settling in, Daddy?" "Just fine," I said. "And how's the house?" "Oh, we're making some upgrades," she said brightly. New paint, new layout. It needed modernization. She had no idea. Later that night, Derek visited again. This time he brought photos. They tore out the floral wallpaper in the living room, he said, handing me the picture. The one Grandma picked out. I clenched my jaw. And they're throwing out the old furniture, said it's outdated and taking up space. What about the photo albums? He hesitated. I heard Mom call it junk. Said she'd clear out the closets next. I stared at the picture, at the place where my life had unfolded, being gutted like it meant nothing. Friday, I said quietly. We move Friday. You sure? I nodded slowly. She's already too comfortable. The more she thinks she's in control, the harder it'll hit her when it all flips. Derek looked at me with a grin slowly growing on his face. This is going to be epic. No, I corrected him, locking eyes with my grandson. This is going to be justice. Friday morning came crisp and cool, like the world itself knew something big was about to shift. Derek picked me up from the boarding house at 7:30 sharp. He was jittery, half from nerves, half from anticipation. I had never seen him so keyed up, like he was about to see the final act of a play we'd been rehearsing in secret. Are you sure you want to go through with this, Grandpa? He asked as we drove through the quiet streets. She's going to explode. I need to see her face, I said. I need to hear her say it, say everything she's tried to deny. We parked on a side street across from the house. It wasn't mine anymore, technically, but it still felt like it. The garden ununice, once nurtured, was visible from where we sat. The roses were still there, though overgrown now. Probably too old-fashioned for Helena's aesthetic. At 8:05, 3 white vans rolled slowly up the road. Each one had the New Hope Foundation logo printed in bold letters, silhouettes of a cat and a dog enclosed in a circle. Derek's hand gripped the steering wheel tighter. They're right on time, he muttered. From the first van, Martha King stepped out in a business-casual outfit that meant business. She looked calm, confident, and ready for anything. The volunteers followed, young folks in matching T-shirts unloading crates, kennels, and stacks of supplies like they were setting up camp. Then the front door of the house burst open. There she was. Helena stepped out onto the porch in a silk robe, holding a mug of coffee like she hadn't bothered to read the script ahead of today's show. Her eyebrows pulled tight, lips curled into irritation the moment she saw the vans. "Hey!" she shouted across the lawn. "What are you doing? This is private property." Martha didn't flinch. She walked up the front path and extended a hand. "Good morning. You must be Helena Bowen. I'm Martha King, director of the New Hope Animal Foundation." Helena didn't take the handshake. "What the hell is this? Why are you in my driveway?" "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding," Martha replied, opening a folder. "This house is now the property of New Hope. The deed was officially transferred last week. All properly notarized and filed." Helena yanked the papers from her hand and scanned them with shaking fingers. The moment her eyes landed on my signature, her whole face changed. Rage, disbelief, confusion, all crashing at once. "This is a joke," she snapped. "It's a forgery. My father he couldn't have done this." "Mr. Finnick acted of his own volition," Martha said firmly. "He was medically cleared as competent and had full legal support. The home was gifted with the stipulation that it become a permanent shelter named after his late wife." Helena's face contorted. "Animals!" she gasped, spinning around just in time to see volunteers unloading crates of meowing cats and nervous dogs. That was when Brandon came outside in jeans and a T-shirt, still rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What's going on?" he asked, looking at the chaos on the lawn. "David gave the house away," Helena snapped, thrusting the documents toward him, "to a shelter. Can you believe this?" He scanned the papers and blanched. These are real," he muttered. "This is official." "You shut up," she hissed, yanking the papers back. Martha cleared her throat. "Ma'am, we also have an eviction order. You have 24 hours to vacate. We'll give you time to gather personal belongings, but you can't remain here." I turned to Derek. "It's time." He nodded, then slowly stepped out of the car with me. The moment Helena saw me walking across the lawn, her whole body went stiff. "There he is," she shouted, voice cracking. "You! You planned this whole thing." She wasn't wrong. And now it was time to finish it. "There he is. You planned this whole thing." Helena's voice rang across the yard like a siren in the dead of night. I stopped halfway up the walk and looked her square in the eye. Brandon backed away toward the porch, as if suddenly realizing there was no exit route in the direction he was headed. But Helena, she didn't back down. She stormed down the steps like a woman possessed. "You tricked me," she hissed. "You lied to me. You said you were just thinking about it." "I was," I said calmly. "Then I decided, and I made sure it was legal, permanent, and beyond your reach." "Why?" Her voice cracked. "Why would you do this to your own daughter?" "Because you stopped being my daughter the second you tried to erase me," I said, loud enough for every volunteer, every neighbor, watching from behind their curtains to hear. "You walked into my home, planned my removal, and stripped every piece of my life for your convenience. You didn't come out of love, Helena. You came to loot the corpse of your own family." Her face twisted into something I didn't recognize. It wasn't just rage. It was panic. Pure, unfiltered desperation. She looked around as if hoping someone would step in, defend her, undo the damage, but all she found were volunteers setting up pet beds and assembling outdoor kennels. The transformation had already begun. "You had no right," she spat. "I had every right," I said. "It was my house, my choice, and I made it with a clear head and a clear conscience." She turned to Derek like he was her last hope. "And you helped him?" Derek didn't flinch. "I supported him. I didn't know every detail, but I knew what you were doing, and I wasn't going to stand by and let it happen." "You ungrateful little—" "Don't," he snapped, stepping between us. "Don't talk to me like that. Not anymore." Helena recoiled like she'd been slapped. For a moment, it looked like she was going to break. Her shoulders sagged, her lip quivered, but then she glanced at the neighbors gathering across the street and straightened up. "This isn't over," she said. "I'll fight this. I'll get a lawyer." "You go ahead," I replied. "But every form is signed, every transfer filed. I'm not as helpless as you thought, Helena." She looked at Brandon, but he stayed quiet. The weight of the fallout was already pressing down on him, and he didn't want to catch any more of it. "You've humiliated me," she said through clenched teeth. "No," I said, voice steady. "You did that yourself. I just made sure the world saw it." She turned without another word and stormed back into the house. Less than 2 minutes later, she reappeared with a suitcase and a tote bag. Brandon followed like a man going to his own execution. They walked past us without a word, no apology, no acknowledgement, just silence and fury. As they disappeared down the sidewalk, I turned to Martha. "Everything okay to proceed?" She nodded. "We'll finish setup by this evening. The first animals arrive tomorrow." "Good," I said, taking a deep breath. "This house deserves life again." Derek clapped me on the shoulder. "Grandma would have loved this." "I know," I said, voice tight. I stood there watching as new hands brought new purpose into the place I once feared would be stripped clean. No longer a home for Helena's greed. Now, a haven, a place of healing, a monument to everything Eunice stood for. Helena thought she'd written my ending. Turns out I was just getting started. The transformation was fast. By Sunday morning, the front yard had been trimmed, kennels were neatly aligned, and the front porch had a fresh coat of paint. Volunteers were everywhere, cleaning, repairing, organizing, but none of them treated the house like a job site. They moved with care, respect, like they knew this place meant something. That was when it hit me. I didn't just save my house. I gave it new breath. Eunice would have cried, happy tears, the kind she used to shed when one of her rescues found a forever home. She'd stand in the sunroom, hand over her heart, whispering, "This is exactly what we dreamed." I walked room to room, each one already buzzing with new energy. Where Helena had once planned to rip out everything, the volunteers had preserved it. Her junk was now heritage. Eunice's Bell collection displayed in a cabinet, family photos hung neatly in the hallway, even her favorite quilt folded across a bench by the window. and right in the middle of the living room sat a small wooden plaque, the Ununis Finnick Animal Refuge, for those who need a second chance. I stood there staring at it longer than I probably should have. My throat tightened. Derek came up beside me and placed a hand on my shoulder. "She'd be proud," he said softly. "I hope so," I managed. He gave me a moment, then handed me an envelope. "This came to my place. It's from Mom." I opened it slowly, already knowing it wouldn't be an apology. And it wasn't. "Dad, you blindsided me. I don't even recognize you anymore. I tried to give you structure, security. This is what you chose instead. You'll regret this. Helena." No love, no warmth, just venom dressed in self-pity. I folded the letter and dropped it into the trash without a word. "Nothing worth keeping," I said. Derek nodded. "You know she'll keep pushing. That kind of pride doesn't die easy." "Let her try," I said. "The law is airtight. The house is gone, the trust is locked, and her hold on me is broken." He smiled. "Still, if she shows up again, maybe we should install cameras, just in case." I chuckled. "That's a good idea. Let's get ahead of it." By Monday, the first animals arrived, 6 cats and 2 elderly dogs from a crowded downtown shelter. Watching them sniff the floor, curl into corners, and blink slowly in sunbeams made something settle deep in my chest. A peace I hadn't felt in months. The volunteers moved in rhythm, setting up food stations and bedding. One young girl named Maddie, maybe 19, sat quietly with a shaking tabby for over an hour until it finally crawled into her lap. "She hasn't trusted anyone in weeks," Maddie whispered, like she didn't want to scare the moment off. That night I sat in Eunice's old armchair, my armchair now, I guess, and watched that same cat curl up by the heater vent. Helena never understood the house. She thought it was just walls and floors, square footage and resale value. But it wasn't. It was laughter echoing down the hallway. It was cinnamon rolls in the oven on Christmas morning. It was sleepless nights with sick animals and warm afternoons with Derek playing with the hose in the backyard. This house was never about comfort. It was about connection. That's what she missed. That's what she'll never understand. And that's why she'll never get it back. I leaned back, feeling the weight of the past week slowly lifting off me. For once, everything was exactly as it should be. Let Helena rage. Let her sulk, scheme, threaten. She can't take back what's already been given away, for the right reasons, to the right people, at the right time. This chapter of my life? It didn't end with betrayal. It started with redemption. By the second week, the house was alive again. You could hear it, the soft shuffle of paws on hardwood, gentle meows echoing from the kitchen, the quiet hum of care in motion. Every corner that once echoed with silence now pulsed with life. The spirit of this home wasn't just back. It was amplified. The neighbors started dropping by. Some brought old towels or food. Others just came curious, unsure what to make of the new setup. But when they saw what was happening, saw the animals healing, the people smiling, they stayed. One lady, Mrs. Langford, from 2 houses down, came every afternoon to brush the dogs. Said it reminded her of when her kids were young. It wasn't just a shelter now. It was a community. But of course peace never lasts long when there's someone like Helena lurking in the background. It was a Thursday morning. I was refilling the bird feeder out back when I saw a sleek black car pull up at the curb. She stepped out in heels and a tailored suit, carrying a leather briefcase like she was walking into a boardroom instead of the home she tried to steal. I watched her walk up the driveway without a hint of hesitation, bold as ever. Martha met her on the porch, arms crossed. "Can I help you?" "I need to speak with my father," Helena said, all frost and formality. I stepped forward, wiping my hands on a rag. "You can speak, but you won't change anything." "Not here," she snapped. "I want privacy." Martha looked at me. I nodded once. We walked to the far end of the garden, behind the tool shed. She turned fast, dropping the act. "This is insane," she hissed. "You gave up everything." "For what? Some mutts and strays?" "For dignity, for peace, for purpose," I said. All the things you tried to strip from me. I was protecting you. No, I cut in. You were protecting your bank account and your image. You wanted me gone so you could sell this house and pad your lifestyle. Don't insult me by pretending it was anything else. She gritted her teeth. You're old. You don't think straight. I thought straight enough to see what you were doing. She pulled a folder from her bag. You think this is over? It's not. I have attorneys. I'll contest the deed, the donation, everything. I'll drag it through court until there's nothing left but ashes. I smiled. Then I suggest you start saving, because my paperwork is bulletproof. And while you're burning money trying to undo something righteous, I'll be right here, watching this place thrive. Why? She asked again, eyes wild now. Why did you do this to me? Because I saw who you really were, and I knew if I didn't act, you'd erase everything your mother and I built. You already started. You didn't even hesitate. She stared at me, the fight draining from her face, replaced by something colder, disgust. But it wasn't aimed at me, it was inward. You think you're the hero, she whispered, but you're just bitter, vindictive. No, I said quietly, I'm free. She didn't say another word, just turned and walked away, heels crunching on gravel, back stiff like a statue trying not to shatter. I stood there a while, watching her get into the car and drive off. No tears, no closure, just distance, and that was enough. That night we held a small gathering at the shelter, pizza, iced tea, laughter. Derek brought his guitar, and Maddie sang softly while the animals lounged around us like old souls who finally found home. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was living. The morning after Helena's visit, the sun rose warm and clear. I sat on the back porch with a cup of coffee, watching the volunteers feed the animals. There was something deeply satisfying about seeing the yard full, not with guests or party decorations like in the old days, but with purpose, with love. This house had found a new rhythm, and I fit into it like a missing puzzle piece finally placed. Derek showed up around 10 with 2 bags of donated supplies and that crooked smile he got from his grandmother. You ready to take a ride? He asked. To where? You'll see. We drove out to the edge of town, past the strip malls and fast food chains until we hit a quiet 2-lane road bordered by fields. He pulled into a gravel lot beside a small brick building with a sign that read, Maple Ridge Community Center. Inside, an older woman greeted us warmly. Mr. Finnick, she said, shaking my hand. Derek told us about your story and about your wife. We'd be honored if you spoke at the opening next weekend. The shelter's inspiring people, and we want to highlight it. I was stunned. You want me to give a speech? She smiled. Just tell the truth. People need to hear it. The truth. For years, I thought my story ended the day Eunice died, that everything afterward would just be filler, fading out like an old photograph. But now, I saw it for what it was, a second act. After we left, Derek and I got burgers and sat at the park across from his old middle school. I think she's done, he said. Mom, she won't come back. I hope so, I said. But if she does, she'll find nothing left to take. He nodded slowly. You know, I used to think I had to pick between you and her, but not anymore. You don't have to choose, I said. You just have to be true to yourself. He looked down, then back up. I want to be more involved, at the shelter, maybe full time. The words hit me harder than I expected. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything, he said. I want to build something that matters, not just for the animals, for me, for you, for Grandma. I reached out and put a hand on his shoulder. You already are. Back at the shelter that evening, the place was buzzing with energy. A new litter of kittens had arrived, one barely the size of my palm. Maddie was bottle feeding it in the kitchen while the others organized a yard cleanup. I walked through the halls, taking it all in, the laughter, the paw prints, the joy. And then I saw it. Right there beside the front door, someone had hung a framed photo of Eunice holding a baby raccoon, smiling like she was made of sunshine. Below it, a small brass plaque read, in memory of the woman who loved without limits. I stood there longer than I meant to. Someone must have seen me because the music dimmed and Maddie appeared beside me. "She's why we're all here," she said gently. "She was everything," I replied. I stepped outside to clear my head and found Martha sweeping the porch. She looked up and grinned. "You know, David, you didn't just give us a building, you gave us a heartbeat." I smiled. "It gave me one, too." She leaned on the broom handle. "You think you're done?" I shook my head. "I think I'm just getting started." The sky turned pink above us. A soft breeze carried the scent of pine and distant rain. In the span of a few weeks, I'd lost a daughter, reclaimed a life, and gained a purpose I never saw coming. And as I stood there, watching the lights flick on one by one in the house that used to hold my past, I knew one thing for certain. It now held my future. The morning of the community center event, I stood in front of my closet and ran my fingers over the sleeves of my best suit. The one Eunice always said made me look presentable enough to meet a president. I put it on, slow, button by button, feeling every year that brought me to this moment settle right into my shoulders. This wasn't just a speech. This was a reckoning. Derek picked me up early. He looked nervous, fidgeting behind the wheel. "They printed flyers," he said. "The paper's coming. I think they're going to record it too." "Let 'em," I said. "If we're doing this, we're doing it loud." Maple Ridge Community Center was already buzzing when we arrived. Folding chairs set in neat rows, a long table with cookies and lemonade, kids playing with a golden retriever out front, parents mingling. And right in the middle of it all, our volunteers, Maddie, Harold, Mrs. Langford, all smiling, all proud. I sat in the front row, trying to ignore the weight of what I'd agreed to. Public speaking wasn't my thing. I was a man of blueprints and bolts, not microphones and applause. But this story wasn't just mine anymore. When Martha stepped up to the podium and called my name, the crowd clapped, loud, warm, genuine. I walked slowly, gripping the wooden edges of the stand like it was a lifeline. Then I looked out over that crowd. And I told them the truth. I told them about a house. Not a big house, not a fancy one, just a home. A home built over years with the woman I loved, a woman who gave everything she had to creatures the world forgot. I told them how we filled that home with laughter, with life, with fur and feathers and the kind of chaos that makes you feel alive. Then I told them how, after she passed, I was almost erased. How the person I trusted most tried to pack me away like old furniture, turn my grief into a profit margin. But most importantly, I told them how I fought back, how I found my voice again in the same place I lost everything. How the house Helena tried to sell became something bigger than her ambition, something pure. And when I spoke about Derek, how he stood by me, believed me, helped me take it all back, I had to pause. The lump in my throat wouldn't let me continue for a moment, but I pushed through. Because this wasn't just for me, it was for everyone who'd ever been underestimated, discarded, forgotten. When I finished, the room stood up. I don't remember what they clapped for longer, my words or the truth behind them. But I remember feeling something I hadn't in years, not survival, pride. Back at the shelter that evening, I sat in the garden under a sky full of stars. The animals were asleep, the volunteers had gone home. It was quiet, peaceful. Derek came out and handed me a folded piece of paper. "One of the kids wrote you something." I opened it, crayon letters scrawled in uneven lines. "Thank you for helping the animals. I want to be like you when I grow up." I smiled, folded it carefully, slipped it into my shirt pocket. That was all the reward I ever needed. So here I am now, at the age most folks stop living and start waiting. But not me. I've got work to do, a house full of stories to write, lives to save, memories to honor. Helena? She's not my burden anymore. She made her choice, and I made mine. This is my house, my legacy, my revenge, and I earned every damn inch of it.